Hi, everyone. My name is Somto Ajulichuku of Animate Africa. Animate Africa is an organization which is drawing synergy between African studios across the continent and creating opportunities as a collective and building a bridge between African animation and the rest of the world. Today, I have with me Lucrezia of Kukwa, a Kenya-based company which is leading the charge in African animation, um, and through a project called Super Sema. And we're just going to be diving deep into the history of our organization and how she started it, and their journey so far with the amazing story Super Sema. I'm so excited to have you with us, Lucrezia.
Same here. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Just to jump right in, can you give us a little bit of background on who you are, how you got into animation in the first place, maybe your career pathway that led you to this point of being the founder and CEO of Kukwa Media?
Sure. So my background is a little bit mixed. Well, first of all, I'm Italian, but I'm currently based in Kenya, in Nairobi. I've been here for the past 5 years and working for the last 8 years here. And it's an incredible, thriving place to be in. I have a background at the intersection of entertainment, tech, and entrepreneurship. So not specifically from the animation industry itself, which was actually great because it allowed me to do things differently, and just apply a very entrepreneurial approach as to what we were doing. And yeah, I first came to Kenya with the idea of creating something empowering for kids. And I saw that there was very little content that was made specifically for kids in this continent that they could feel represented and see themselves in. There was a lack, frankly, in the rest of the world as well. And we started early on testing characters and storylines, and we saw that kids were really excited about the idea of having a cartoon that looked like them. So that's when we decided to create Super Sema and build around her an entire franchise that started with content and an animation series, and now is also into books, music, merchandise, toys, soon apparel, and hopefully one day theme parks. So we're hoping to go all around and really make this a complete franchise. We say from Africa to the world, because it's been very popular in Africa and in various countries, but also internationally in the US and the UK and other European countries and all over the world.
Oh, that's amazing. I think it's really remarkable to see how you could leverage on your experience from coming from technology to look at scalable ways to take an approach on the animation business. Um, what were some of the insights that you really took from your previous industry and bringing it into this space? Because animation, in a large extent, is technology, because it's piggybacks off technology to create the arts, right? Um, and what were these companies or industries that you were working in before as you took that knowledge and applied it into Kukwa?
Sure. So originally, I went to drama school in England, so that's where my entertainment and storytelling angle comes from and passion. And then I worked in San Francisco within the startup tech world. So I was in an accelerator for technology startups, and then I went to Singularity University, which is this NASA-based program where you work with exponential tech to have a positive impact on some of the global challenges. And my focus was always education, mobile technology, media. And I realized there how through media, you could really have a positive impact at scale in the lives of so many kids growing up. So that's where, you know, my journey started, to understand how I could build content that could travel very fast and be seen by, you know, anyone through a mobile phone. And how this type of content could also be empowering and have positive messages. The other important lesson I learned from being in that startup world was definitely to create, around whatever I was doing, around my mission and what I wanted to create, a viable business model. And very
Mm.
early on, I, you know, as many of us were, you know, one of the top questions was, how do we fund this? How do we make this viable? How can we attract investors to put money into this, right? And can we build a company around it? Because my angle was always from the entrepreneurship. So I knew I wanted to create a business out of what I was doing. And I started looking early on at other companies who had at the heart of what they were doing an IP of characters and a story world. And obviously, you know, the most famous example is Disney. Mr. Walt Disney back in 1957 drew the entertainment business model, which is now currently still used by so many entertainment companies out there. And at the heart of it, it has an IP. And then once, you know, fans love and adore the characters that have been created, you can build around that an entire universe spanning from consumer products, books, music, theme parks, other experiences, comic books, and theatrical. So that model is the way to monetize the demand for your content and for the story world that you've created, provided that it is one that is loved and adored by, you know, many, many fans around the world. So that was, you know, what I had identified early on, and that was the model that I was going to use around Super Sema.
Yeah, it's that's just brilliant to see. And I feel like there is so much to learn from that experience. And you know, just that application of it was, I think, is really remarkable, and it works. You know, you prove that it works. Um, so with Kukwa, just to, you know, lean into the creative side of it, how did that begin? You know, what was that aha moment for you? You know, it was like, oh, you know, how did you pick the name of the company? And being that Super Sema is its first product, if I'm correct, um, how did you come about Super Sema, the story, the vision, and this character that everyone has grown to love?
Yeah, it was a long process, and we did a lot of testing with kids here in Kenya on the ground, and in several other countries at the very early stages. And you know, I think one of the most important parts for us was to bring together an exceptional team from all over the world, actually. So we worked both with Kenyan producers and also, for example, US franchise experts, because we wanted the property, the Super Sema, to be global from the get-go. So we wanted to incorporate elements that were authentically African and that, you know, not many other people or kids knew around the world. For example, we have an episode on mandazi, which is this amazing Kenyan treat. And you know, that's something very familiar here, but for a kid in the United States, it was something very curious. And we actually got a lot of comments even from the US, how, you know, these kids are begging their moms to cook them mandazis. So we really wanted to create, you know, this joint connection between, you know, the world, because our mission was always the one to make content that kids here could feel represented in, and then anywhere else in the world. We wanted to expose them to diversity, to different culture, and, you know, have them grow up with a more global mindset. So it's this joint mission that for us was always very important from the start. So obviously the creative that went into that had to come from different voices, is right. And that's one of the processes I enjoyed the most, because to create something truly global and unique, we needed that exchange, and it was truly an incredible process. We worked with really amazing people and constantly testing with kids to see what resonated and what didn't. And then, you know, incorporating themes in our episodes that any 5-year-old could relate to, right? Play
Yeah.
patterns that we know they'd want to replicate at home. One of the most famous parts that we have iconically in each episode is the "Let's Technovate," which finally is when Super Sema and her brother MB start to create a solution, and they start technovating using the sciences, the arts, the technology to build cool things and solve a problem. And so that kind of ingenuity was something we had seen in kids a lot, especially Generation Alpha, which is, you know, our target audience, who are born with technology at their fingertips. They're, you know,
Mm-hmm.
makers and creators at heart. So we wanted to
Exactly.
replicate that, those qualities in Super Sema and each episode.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research that goes into your work, and that is something that is also a key point to take. You know, every move that you make is well thought about and intentional, and that really translates to the life cycle of your products. Um, uh, I think something that really excites me is also um, um, what was your journey to funding like? You know, because I would say Kukwa has raised, if I do say so myself, I think it's the most successful fundraising in African animation, you know, from an independent studio, you know, that has been able to raise funding and hold their own independent productions on their own terms, you know, not within the box of any bigger brand that's, you know, in ownership of this IP. This is a Kukwa IP. How did you navigate that? How did you position yourself in such a way that you could create that opportunity, not just for Cocoa, but setting a standard for the entire African animation industry?
Thank you for that. Yeah, it was quite the journey. Um, Again, as I said, I didn't come from the animation world specifically, so I approached the whole fundraising from a different world, which was the one I was coming from, the one of startups and venture capital investors. So the money we raised over the last 5 years came mainly from venture capital funds and angel investors who invested within the company and obviously saw the opportunity with the, you know, such an untapped market for African content globally. And also saw the business model that we presented, which is the one I explained earlier with you know, the franchise model. So there was a clear path to monetization. And obviously, you know, the team was is always very important in the early days, right? They need to have conviction that you can deliver it. And frankly, also timing. It was a very exciting moment. What we were pitching soon became something everyone was talking about because Black Panther came out the following year, and it was the
Mm,
biggest box office success of that year. It
mhm.
attracted one of the most diverse audiences in the world. So everything we were telling our investors in those early days of pitching then, you know, was proven by Marvel, with, you know, which is one of the biggest entertainment companies out there.
Yeah.
Um, and then, you know, a few other things happened in terms of timing, which are always very important. So the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter in the US suddenly made the world realize, and Hollywood especially, the importance for more diverse content, for for kids and families, especially since it's so important to have positive role models as they grow up, and diverse role models. So the combination of all these things were what really convinced investors in the early days. And then, we did a second round of funding, and that's kind of, letting them see that what we told them we would do with the first round, actually happened.
Yeah.
Um, then, the other important part of our journey was when YouTube Originals came on board. So they became our main distributors, and they had 100 million fund for original content for YouTube, and we were very excited by it. We pursued them with all our with everything we had, because we really wanted to be on YouTube, as that was always our preferred platform, because it allowed us to build and grow an audience independently, retain our IP rights, and
Mm-hmm.
really,
Mm-hmm.
manage our own growth and strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Would have gone in the early days with you know, another distributor or broadcaster, the majority of them would ask you for, certain rights and way more ownership to then kind of take the property in their own direction. Make it a success if they really believed in it, kill it if it didn't work out for them. So we really wanted to make sure that stayed with us so that we could lead that growth strategy.
Yeah.
um yeah, so that was kind of all the different funding combinations that came together to make Super Sema happen, and to, it's what
Yeah, I think that's that
by no means
yeah,
means that it was easy, and it takes many many moving parts.
yeah.
um we're so glad, so many things happen, and we brought on board a lot of great investors that really believed in what we were doing, and that's at the end of the day the best part, right? That you managed to raise the funding from people who actually care about what you're creating.
Yes, of course. I mean, when you talk about Tencent, I mean, they definitely have a lot of experience in the entertainment space, so having people that don't just are not just expecting a profit, but understand the way the business works is also really important. So I think you really work with the best partners towards raising this. And they also understand the value of the animation, and that's why they could put that much funding forward. Um, so kudos, man. I think your journey is really brilliant, and we definitely need more minds like you within this space. Um, so over to my next question, which I'm super curious about. I feel like the talent that you brought around Super Sema was amazing. You know, we're talking about the goddess of Black entertainment, Lupita Nyong'o. How did you even get her to like look at you guys? You know what I mean? What was that journey like, in terms of convincing her about the project? I know she's very passionate about Black stories, you know, so that could have been, and of course, female-led stories, but what was that conversation like? What was getting across to her management or meeting her in person? How did that happen?
Well, I always say it starts by asking. If you don't ask, you
You don't get it.
don't get it.
Yeah.
And I was raised with that mentality, like always raise your hand, always ask. Worst it goes, it's a no, right? But
Hmm.
um, you're all once you ask, you're already 50% there, right? It's either yes or no. If you don't ask, it stays to zero. So we sent an email. We sent an email to her agent. My partner knew her agent because she was working in Hollywood a few years back.
Yeah.
And you know, the best partnerships are the ones that immediately made sense, right? And everyone in our company felt like she had the perfect, that she would love this, right? Because she had that superhero DNA because of Black Panther. She was Kenyan. We're based here in Kenya. Um, as you say, she's absolutely phenomenal. And so we all said, why wouldn't she love this, right?
Yeah.
And And she did right away. It was very simple and straightforward. She immediately saw the value and loved Super Sema right away, loved that it was Kenyan. And yeah, and then she has a great team, and we managed to bring her on board. And we feel extremely lucky um, for that, because she really, put Super Sema at the heart and center of Hollywood and internationally, and really, really helped our brand grow and be seen.
Yeah, I definitely think that put it on the map, you know, especially, you didn't just capture her, you captured Lupita Nyong'o at her prime, just at the moment where she had taken off with, I mean, before Black Panther, of course, there was her, but but Black Panther was a really was a real projecting time for her, and it was around the same time that she cut the deal. Um, Moving forward from that, I think one thing I also enjoy about Cookware is their vision of, like you said, creating a company that is beyond the screen, right? And I've seen a lot of things that have taken that into reality, and one of them is your toys. Can you give me a little bit more information on, how on what your experience was on taking Super Sema from a TV show into actual merchandising, franchising, and what other visions that you have beyond the screen?
Great, yes. So we wanted to create something beyond the screen from day one. So anything we incorporated in the show, we did very intentionally. From what Sema was wearing, we were like, how is this going to become the costume that every single girl we're gonna, wants to wear for Halloween at
Yeah,
some
wants
point?
to cosplay. Yeah.
Exactly. Or, she has this Uber Nini bracelet. We call it her Uber Nini, where she talks with her brother. How can that become a toy? Her buns, and, how do we make everything so iconic that
Hmm.
kids, want that, right? Want to role play, want to be her, love her. The secret lab where she technovates in, how can that become a play set with lots of, science and makering stations. So we had all of that input coming in right at the beginning, in the design, in the writing of the episodes and all of that, because that was always going to be our trajectory, right? To then expand it beyond the screen. We thought it would take a little bit longer to to get the merchandising out, and usually, you need to build a really massive audience before you can go to retail at a large scale with consumer products. We had several partners, and this is all in the US now, that were very excited because it was such a unique concept. And again, the timing was so right. There was nothing like this out there. And they all fell in love with the character. They all found her adorable, and they saw how it could translate to a doll, for example, which was our first toy. So we partnered with an amazing toy company in the US, and they produced, manufactured it, and distributed the doll with also the plush of Sema and the goat Moyo.
Yeah.
And since then, we also brought on board several other licensing partners, such as publishing house, Penguin Random House, who created a line of books, and then we have a few other products coming out. We first launched small collections because we are at the beginning of our trajectory. So for sure, the hope um, is to continue to grow and have more products and bigger lines over the next few years. It is
Yeah.
all fueled by the demand, right? So the larger the audience, the larger the licensing and merchandising can be. So we're
Of
really
course.
focused on getting Sema, as known as possible. And, one of the things I always say is that, all of this can happen in the US because of the ecosystem of partners that is established and the licensing model that is very clear. we would love to do the same in Africa.
Mm,
We aren't, the same advanced ecosystem for licensing for toy manufacturers, which is such a shame because it's extremely expensive to import from the US, and we did it anyways. We did it at our
yeah.
cost because we want dolls in Kenya and all of that, but it's not viable for anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I really hope that this market could build up the capacity for us to be able to do that, because
Mm-hmm.
such an opportunity, and the task force is here, the creative industry is growing. So those are a few of the bits and pieces that you know we're doing where it is available in the US and the UK. Um, but we love to have that same opportunity in the content with the right partners, because we're obviously not the one producing the merchandising, and all. We
Yeah.
rely on
Yeah.
partners.
Yeah, it's and it makes sense that way because when you focus on the IP and the growth of the IP, the partners would come to you. If someone is in the business of toys, they're looking for the IP that can make them sell more toys, and they would come to you. So you're already on the right path, and you're everly always going to attract the partners that you need, as you always have. But the toys are amazing. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to add, that since we're talking about bringing things off the screen, is
Mm-hmm.
that was also always part of our mission. I mean, there's so many parents and mothers within our company, and
Mm,
screen time is a big topic in our company and in the world, especially given that's what we do, right? So we do two things. We try first to always make sure that any content we create is actually valuable screen time. We call it purposeful screen time. So
mm,
if your child needs to spend 30 minutes in front of a screen, which, let's be honest, you know, you kind of need it some time to get a break.
mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that that half hour is extremely purposeful, right? You are not kind of numbing your kid in front of colorful images, but
Just
you're
so you can be busy. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
and you're instilling powerful messages in a way that is funny, adventurous, so the kids don't feel like they're getting a lecture, but at the same time that you get value out of that screen time. The second thing we try to do is that anything we put in our episodes could always inspire something in the real world, right? So we love to, you know, plant little seeds in the episodes where kids can then be like, oh, I want to go and make this now, right? This
Yeah.
this thing that I just did. I want to go and play. I want to go outside and do it. I want to do the same thing. So that they recreate what they see in the episodes in the real world. And that's also very valuable, because that's when you really develop your imagination and your skills, and then that really becomes a purposeful, meaningful time that you've spent on screen. And obviously toys and everything else help with that, right? So that's why it's also important and part of our mission beyond kind of the business model of our company.
That's amazing. And I also see there's a lot of ed tech happening as well. So in a way, it's also a form of education and creating, that experience too. Are there things within the ed tech system that are also off the screen as well? Or, experiences like Super Sema parties and stuff like little experiences for kids?
Yeah, we've done a bunch of activations. We now also have a Super Sema mascot, who looks amazing and is very fun. And we've done several STEM activations. So we have STEM stations with experiments of science and technology, engineering, and arts. And then kids can interact with the character and do the same experiments that Super Sema does in the episodes. So that's also really fun. It's educational, and again, absolutely part of our mission to really blend the education and entertainment world in a fun way to to have a positive impact and have kids, have a fun day at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Now, moving into another the second half of the conversation, I wanted to get an insight deeper into your production challenges when producing. Where is Super Sema produced mostly? You know, is it produced locally here within the continent in Kenya? Um, and you know, what are the challenges that you face when, you know, trying to produce your animation? Being it's a YouTube original, are you working with some deadlines towards your production, or do you have the levity to produce that by yourself when you want, how you want, control your release? Um, and what is your opinion, as a second part to that question, what is your opinion on emerging artificial intelligence and the application of that in your animation production?
Sure. Yes. So we have a big combination of production in terms of geographies. So our main studio is here in Kenya, Nairobi. This is where our producers are from. The writing happens here. The sound and sound effects happen here. All the voiceover artists are all Kenyan, and all the marketing and graphics also happen here. Then we work tightly with a small studio in Italy who's been doing our art for a very long time, and then a studio in India who's doing the animation. And then the franchise part of it all, the franchise team is based in the US. So it's truly a kind of a global setup. We uh, decided to, our intention was to do as much as we possibly could in Kenya. And we were very intentional about that. And then, the other two important parts were budgets. So it was very important for us to be able to produce at a price that we could afford. As everyone knows, animation is extremely expensive.
Yeah,
And at the same time, we needed great quality. So the partners that ended up coming on board and that we truly adore working with, kind of combined all of those aspects.
yeah,
Of course, the challenges is managing a global team across different time zones.
yeah.
But
You need like some super summer producer for that one. Yeah,
exactly, but it really worked out. I don't know if it's the Super Sema magic or what, but we're truly a family, and the love and care and excellence that has been put into every little bit of it is extraordinary, and we all feel very connected. We've had a couple of team retreats in the past. Everyone came here to Kenya. We've also had, our first production was a Birth of Fire because it was during COVID. So we had just begun, and 3 months into it, um, we had to kind
the
of
world shut down. Yeah,
shut down, and we all had to go remote. And we, one of our most experienced producers and writers, Claudia Lloyd, she taught me everything I needed and to know about production and animation. She's phenomenal. And you asked if there was a rigorous production timeline. There absolutely was. And there was, because if you know, can't follow it, the budgets go up. So we
yeah,
were really, really tight with the schedules. And every day that we'd lose in time, it's extra cost, right? So we had to be really, really exceptional with the production line. And it took a while to get there, but we did, and it's incredible to see once all the pieces come together and it just becomes a production machine, right? And again, I think because I wasn't coming directly from this world, I was able to do things differently. And in other parts of the world, animation is even more expensive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I remember one day I was adding up all the numbers, and I was like, well, it's not as expensive as they're doing it in the US. And I was like, am I missing something? So I calculate again and again and again. I'm like, well, okay, if we can do it for this and this is the quality, then
Let's make it happen.
this is what.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was bad. That almost like it didn't match what. But then, when I had some meetings in the US, they were like, "Wow, amazing that you can produce, such quality content at these prices." And the world now is needing that, right? I don't think the cost of animation, previously is just out of this world,
Yeah.
um and we can do things differently. And I think many, 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 many production companies, even in Hollywood now, have started to realize that. And they are cutting budgets, redoing things, reinventing the wheel, right? Because $1 million per episode is a huge, huge amount. And I think you can do things at a much more efficient way. And to come into your question of I think that you know we haven't explored tools yet, and we're waiting to see what's coming out. We're definitely open to it as long as it's in aid of our creative talent, right? There are certain things that are not science and cannot be ever substituted, right? But if we have tools that really help our creatives do their jobs even better, have more time to think about more important things, then that's the future, and I think it's the way to go. Um, but if we want to go all the way and say, will machines, be creating the next animation series? I don't know. I see the spark of genius and creativity of our team, and I just not sure that that can ever be fully substituted, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the human touch is always going to be powerful, but at the same time, AI is an inevitable force coming into the space. And
And then an exciting one as well. Don't get me wrong. We are
yes,
we are very excited about it. But I think, yeah, there's also a way to position it to get teams excited, right?
exactly.
Um,
Creating balance. Yeah. And I mean, if there's anyone that I feel would find that synergy between emerging technology and the space of animation, I think Lucrezia Bisignani would be the one. So we have no doubt that you'll make that happen.
for the next
Um,
conversation.
for the next conversation, exactly. So maybe when we do a part two, we find out that Super Sema can fly out of the screen now. I'm like, oh wow, great. um, and yes, I think to towards wrapping it up, I think that I have one question that I feel two questions actually. And then the first one would start with what is the role of parents in children's content for Super Summer and the Cocoa Company? How do you interact with parents as a key member of your community? And how does that translate into your final products?
Sure. So parents are very important for us. We always say our show is for kids and families. We love co-viewing experiences. There's a bunch of messages and little things that parents might catch in our episodes that kids would see in a different way. So we always try to incorporate that as well. I think it's also very exciting for the millennial parents who are all into technology, maybe have STEM jobs. I think it's extremely exciting for them to have a show for their kids that incorporates those topics and skill sets that they also love and are passionate about. And then, we always wanted to create this balance between creating something educational and meaningful and something fun and full of adventure and gags and entertaining. So I think parents really love the values that our show conveys to their kids, and they're the number one allies, right? If their kids are watching Super Sema, they feel great, they feel good, they know they're watching something that's positive and important for their kids to spend time on. So, I mean, it's they're a very, very important part of the equation, and we make sure with our social media strategy, we're always in regular touch with them, communicating with them, and adding value to helping them raise, their kids.
Absolutely. I feel like it's a it's a it's a really important part of the matrix when creating children's content to kind of have the role of parents in there. Because I mean, kids can't even connect with this content without the parents in the first place. Um, and then just to wrap it up, I would love you to give us like an overview on your on how you see um, the status of the animation industry in Africa as it is today. Um, and also leading us a bit into the dynamics of creating content in Africa rather than making children's content anywhere in the world. What makes it so unique in producing your content here? You know, down to your storytelling, down to the values that you put within your storytelling. We grew up with 90s cartoons, at least I did, watching Johnny Bravo and Courage the Cowardly Dog and Ed, Edd and Eddie, and all these shows were bizarre, absolutely bizarre. You think about Ed, Edd and Eddie, these kids skating around looking for jawbreakers, being rude. Johnny Bravo is flexing his muscles in front of every woman he can find. You know, Courage the Cowardly Dog doesn't even have any kids. So I'm like, it's a dog and two old people, and I'm like, what? So, thinking about that and now thinking about, African cartoons and the way we make them, and you been living here for close to a decade, you know, how does that, what is the dynamic that sets us apart? And what is your peripheral view on the status of the African animation industry?
Well, I can say I am absolutely excited about everything that's coming out from this continent. The creative excellence is extraordinary. The heritage and the richness of storytelling and culture is still untapped, but absolutely, massive. And I think that will translate more and more into original content that not only Africa can be excited about, but the rest of the world. We are so tired of, the content that's being produced in other, internationally. There is really a craving for new stories, right? And I think the world finally also has its eyes on this continent, which is phenomenal, both from a creative perspective, funding perspective, and an audience perspective, right? So I think we are, doing really well, and it will only grow. And I feel extremely privileged to be able to be a part of this, to live here and see it firsthand. And yeah, I'm extremely excited about anything that comes out, whether it's for kids and adults. We need more of it, and I think it's all happening.
I think so too. I think that's it's a really amazing time for African animation. And the way is only up. And we're happy to have players like you in the space that are taking the charge and changing the way we do things, disrupting the thinking and the methodology of how we operate. Um, and I'm excited to see more from Super Seven, more from Kukwa. And yeah, thank you so much for being part of this and sharing your knowledge and your journey. It's been amazing listening to you.
Thank you for having me.